So I used to run sound at this church over in Western Mass. After practice, me and the band would go hang out. So we hung out every week, and one week the drummer named Corey brought a friend of his from one of the schools in town there named Ashley. And she came and she was hanging out with us, and we were chatting and getting along, and me and her kind of hit it off. And we made plans to go do something else later on in the week. And so for a while we were chilling quite a lot. We'd go see some movies together, we were texting a lot, we were hanging out a fair bit, and my friend Aaron was absolutely convinced that we were dating. This was a thing that kept coming up. He'd be like, "Oh, so you're dating Ashley?" And I'm like, "No, I'm not. We've never established that. We've never talked about that. Like, this is not. We've never had a conversation about being in a relationship. We're not in a relationship. This isn't a thing that's happening." And he was like, "No, you're totally dating her. Like, I don't know how you don't see that, but you totally are." He was like, "You go to dates. You text with this girl all night, like you're dating her." I was like, "They're not dates. We're just hanging out, and I work overnights. I'm up at night. Like, night is when I text people. I don't know what you're on about." So when I met Carol, we were talking about previous relationships, stuff like that, and I had told her that my most recent relationship was in PA before I moved to Mass. And Aaron heard about this and was like, no, you need to know that he has actually had a couple girlfriends since moving to Massachusetts. There's Ashley, there's this girl from Boston, this stuff. And I was like, no, I didn't date those people. But Carol was like, explain. So we did. I made my case, Aaron made his case, and she sided with Aaron. She was like, no, you were dating Ashley. I'm going to count that as one of your exes. So I ended up, I married Carol. She's my wife now. Ashley did come to the wedding. She came as one of my guests, one of my friends. And she came and she hung out and we did this stuff, the whole wedding and the reception and all that other stuff. But then in the year or so after that, we kind of grew distant, lost touch. I had a lot going on. She had moved away, all this other stuff. So we just kind of fell out of touch. 2 years into our marriage, though, I was hanging out with Corey, and he mentions Ashley. And so I was like, hey, I haven't talked to her in a few years. How's she doing? What's going on with her? And he's like, oh, she seems fine, but, she's always kind of vague about things. And he explains this was a known problem when she was living in town there, was that when we were hanging out, she was constantly, always kind of vague about things. She wasn't necessarily saying exactly what she thought about stuff. She wasn't exactly coming out with details. She was just kind of expecting people to piece things together a lot. And he goes, for instance, there was this guy that she was dating, and she felt that they were moving too fast. And Corey said that he had asked her whether or not she had expressed her concern about this. And she was like, yes, of course I did. Of course I did. And so he's like, how? How did you express your concern about this? And apparently what she told him was, well, I told him the story of the Great Molasses Flood. This was an event in the 1800s in Boston where some molasses got overheated or something. And it flowed too fast. And so because it's molasses, anything that fell into it got stuck in it. And because it was moving too fast, people didn't move out of the way fast enough because they were expecting it to move at, molasses speed. And it wasn't. And so a lot of people actually died. It was a kind of a tragic event. So he tells me, she told him this story. And Corey was like, okay, and did you connect? How would that seem relevant to you? Like, what does that mean? And she was like, well, because when things move too fast, they get dangerous. And he's like, okay, but did you say that? Did you tell him that that's what that meant? Did you connect it to your relationship in any way? She was like, I think you got the point. And so he tells the story, and I went, well, that's funny. She told me that story, too. And he goes, really? I said, yeah. We were texting one night. We were just talking, chatting along. And she comes out with this trivia about this molasses flood. And I was like, oh, yeah. I've heard about that. I didn't know a whole lot of details, but I had heard about it. So we talked about how wild of an event it was. And then we moved on. And then we both stopped and thought about it for a couple seconds. And he goes, hey, were you the guy that Ashley was dating? And I was like, I don't even know anymore. Apparently, I was. Everyone except me knew that we were dating, and I had no idea. So, of course, when Carol and I got married, she took our marriage certificate and made multiple copies of it and hid it all over the place, partly because official documents about me have a weird habit of disappearing, but also partly because, as she said, she needed proof. She needed to have the receipts so she could point to it and say, no, see, we are in a relationship. You need to know that we're in a relationship.